Welcome to Inside Design with Kandrak and Cole, hosted by two nationally published Atlanta interior designers, Joanne Kandrak and Kelly Cole. These energetic women are also world travelers, charity givers, and bloggers with a wealth of information to share and stories to tell about the interior design world. Okay, now just a warning, this is going to be fun and not too serious. After all, they still do have an interior design business running at full speed.
Hi, everybody. This is Inside Design with Kandrak and Cole, and today we are recording episode 37, a really fun topic, everything you need to know about starting a podcast. In our very first podcast, named Who We Are and Why We're Producing a Podcast, we gave you some background on how our podcast came to be, which is kind of a crazy story. Had it not been for Traci Deforge of a company called Produce Your Podcast, randomly reaching out to us, we would not be here today. So as a recap, Kelly and I went to a design mastermind in Las Vegas where Phil Pallen, who's a brand strategist and coach, said he thought we would be great doing a podcast. We really liked the idea, but didn't really have any idea how we were going to make that happen. And that's where Traci Deforge and Russ Riba come in. They are co-founders of a company called Produce Your Podcast.
I still marvel at how the stars aligned and how this whole thing came to be, because we had known Traci from a long, long time ago, and she had kind of changed the direction of her career and gone back to her roots in radio. And so the fact that we then came full circle back to her is totally still crazy to me. So if you're scrolling through our episode list, go back to the very first one, Who We Are and Why We're Producing a Podcast, because the story is cray. Yeah. So anyway, we're happy to have them as our guests today, and we're going to be talking to them about their backgrounds and why they got started in the business and how they can help you if you're interested, and really also just some hardcore background into, this is serious. This show,
podcasting
we I don't think we knew the depth and of what we were getting ourselves into, really. We kind of just jumped.
Do you know what I have to say?
It's quite a commitment.
That I didn't really think about this before, but in the age of technology, in the age of screens and phones, what I kind of love about a podcast is, if you're looking for information, you can, go on the web and whatever, but you can go into and search a podcast on almost any topic that you might want to learn about, but you don't have to be in front of a screen.
Yes.
So what's great about it too is you can multitask. Artists can be doing their thing while they're listening. You can be working out while you're listening. I think it's a great way to get information without having to sit there and be a slug while you're looking at something.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like my mom's like, well, where do I see you? I'm like, you don't see me, Mom. You just listen. So, So welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
I laughed before you introduced us. Sorry about that.
Don't ask me to edit that out.
Thank you so much for having us on your show. We're so excited to be here.
Well, why don't we start out with Traci? Tell us, a little bit about your background and how you came to be our little angel.
Well, thank you. And actually, we consider you our angels because you are by far, we don't pick favorites, but we really love working with you. How about that?
Shucks.
Thank you.
So for me, and this is just so fun because like you said before, you and I, the Kandrak and Cole and myself had the opportunity to work together a little over 10 years ago when you were very first launching your design business. And at that time, so we'll kind of connect the dots, at that time I had just left my broadcast radio career, which I had spent 18 years on the sales and management side, and just even prior to that, just a huge lover of broadcast radio. Used to sleep with an AM transistor radio under my pillow that dates me a little bit, but it's factual. And that's actually where I met Russ. So this whole 6 degrees of separation, Russ was working in the radio station the very first day that I went to work in radio. So that's when I met him.
I knew that.
Yes, the very first day that I ever walked into the radio station as an employee, he was working there. And that's been a 25-year wonderful business and intersection of business and friendship relationship.
And I was like, oh gosh, we got another new sales weasel.
Yes, and sadly, he figures out a way to throw that in anytime we're together. So, and that being said, that was a great platform for me to then start my consulting company, which was what we like to call business development strategist, as opposed to teaching people to be sales weasels. And then we connected through an women entrepreneur mastermind type workshop program, and that the rest is history. So I love the way you tell your side of the story, Joanne, because Russ and we started our own podcast, which is Journey to There, and we did that. I did that in a similar way to how we connected, in that I really wanted to do a podcast. I love broadcast, and I knew I wanted a professionally produced show. So I texted Russ from an airport in Minneapolis and said, "Do you produce podcasts?" Now, keep in mind, we had been friends, but we hadn't worked together in a couple years at least. And he texts back, "For you, I would." And it was awesome. So sweet. And then, so we launched our show, and swiftly behind that, we thought, you know what? I think other people probably would really like to have their podcast produced full service. And then I saw that you were kind of liking our posts on social media. So I thought, I wonder if they're interested in having a podcast.
It was really all meant to be. I think it's such a great concept.
Well, and I think you made a really good point that maybe people don't realize, and which is a kind of the backbone of this show today, is professionally produced. And when we first decided to do this, we spent a lot of time listening to podcasts, which, quite frankly, I had not been doing. I wasn't a podcast listener. And the variation of content, quality especially, some I just turn on, and the voice, I can't handle the voice.
Or if there's too much sponsorship at the beginning, you kind of lost me. So
the quality of sound is such a big deal. And if you're out there in podcast land and you're listening to us, hopefully you agree that our sound is stellar, because through Tracie and Russ, we've really made some investment in that. But I think that's a really big deal, and that's what you guys do.
I do want to say the investment that you made in this awesome sound quality years ago, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars worth of investment. So it's so affordable now to sound this good.
Yeah. It really wasn't that. Well, for little us, it was an investment, but it wasn't that bad. But there was, you pushed us to make some decisions to up our game with the sound. And we just did whatever you told us to do.
And the reason for that, and this is a testament back to you as business owners, being resourceful and wanting to do things that are efficient for your time, but also is an extension of your brand. And that's one of the things that I think is so important for business owners to take into consideration, is your podcast is the audio logo of your brand. And your design firm has won so many awards. You're up for an HGTV award right now. Your blog was recognized as one of the top 10 blogs to follow in your industry. You are recognized as one of the top firms in Atlanta for interior design. So it would be really unfortunate at best if you had a podcast that sounded hokey and didn't have the quality that's represented in all the other areas of your business.
That is absolutely right.
Yeah, our standards are just a little too high.
Well, no, your standards are a reflection of the quality of the work that you do. And so that's why I think it's just so important, and people don't really think about it. They're like, oh, I'll just grab a smartphone and record to an audio file, and people can do that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with producing your own show. We want to say that, we're just all about everybody having their voice and putting it out there. Yeah. However, as a business owner, using it as a marketing tool, as a business owner, you really want it to be in alignment with the quality of the rest of your work.
So, Russ, after you had to work with the sales weasel, how did it go for you from there?
Listen, we have crossed paths so many times, Tracie and I, and we started when she was that new sales weasel in the radio station, and then after a few years we went our separate ways. She ended up, I think, taking over 7 or 8 radio stations in the building, and I moved away, and I followed my career as a radio personality. But during that time where I was like out, I guess, spreading my wings, I had been approached by so many people with all of these ideas and these business ventures and this and that, and I would invest time, I would invest money in them, and I would lose my butt. And I say to my wife, I'm not doing this anymore. And then Tracie, like you said, I guess she was in Minneapolis or whatever, and she sent me that text. And I said to myself, and I think I said to my wife as well, and I said this to Tracie, it's like, I've had all of these opportunities, and I said I wasn't going to do this again, but this is backed by the Tracie brand. And everything I remember that Tracie touched turned to gold. So it's like, I can't say no to this idea because I have so much faith, and it's like, you know what? I'm all in, and we'll get together, and we make a great team. I mean, she's my work wife, and she is as
and
anal.
You guys are not in the same town. Let's tell everybody that.
Yeah, actually,
she's not as anal as you are.
Oh, but we often sound like we are.
But I mean, as anal as I am about perfectionism and all that, she in her own way is the same way. So we're like 2 peas in a pod.
I would say
That's so
too,
good.
like, I would love to reflect that back on y'all's business partnership, because one of the things I've always just been so impressed by and really inspired by is the way that the two of you women have been such great business partners, but also great friends. And with Russ and me, we always had a business friendship, but for us, our roles and everything that we do are so well defined. We have such a great balance of yin and yang, and that's what makes us work, because I could not do anything remotely close to the production of quality and service, and anything that touches that I couldn't do. And then he relies on me to do the sales weasel / business development side of things, and run everything in the back of the house, so to speak. So how about y'all? Like, how does your yin and yang work?
Well,
exactly like that.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that I think the 4 of us right here are all extremely lucky, because not everybody clicks that way, and not everyone has someone that they feel so strongly and has such faith in their work to work with them. So I think if you can find that person, and apparently you guys found each other a long time ago and ended up coming back. So I think to be able to have those kind of relationships, we're really, really fortunate.
Well, and we have a natural flow of where if one of us will just pick up a project, and then the other one picks up the next, and then another one clicks with a certain client, so she takes on that project, and then, or, maybe I just don't have the mental, bandwidth to work on the stupid workman's comp audit, so maybe she just automatically takes it over without asking.
It really is so unsaid.
It's unsaid, and that is it's kind of like Mike and I, why we're been married so long. There's this unsaid kind of, you pick up where I can't, and I pick up where you can't, kind of, like you said, yin and yang, and it just flows naturally. It's not like anything forced or determined, and
it's great to find that in a personal relationship, but a business relationship is, I think, a little bit tougher, because you're not really married to that person, but you kind of are.
Oh my gosh, I'm married to
We're in it for the long haul, and we do the whole Edith and Archie, bunker from that show in the 70s.
Oh boy,
what was that, All in the Family? Like, we bicker like that, but we always stay together.
Yeah.
So give us some, since you guys are the industry professionals, and podcasts are really, really taking off. And one thing that you guys encouraged us when we first met was to get in while we did. Talk to us a little bit about kind of podcast stats, and because
that's Tracie's department.
You are the stat queen,
She's
Tracie.
the stat queen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just happen to know a couple, so let me share those with you. So right now there are 550,000, right on or around 550,000 podcasts that are in the iTunes library. And although there are other platforms, of course, that you can listen to podcasts on, iTunes is the benchmark or the milestone for these statistics because they are the largest and have been doing it the longest. And so 550,000 podcasts, they are adding approximately 8,000 podcasts per week, whereas
my God.
this time a year ago, they were adding 1,000 a week. So that is some serious exponential growth. And it's really literally almost like a year to the day. So they've gone in a 12-month window from adding 1,000 per week to 8,000 per week. That being said, there are clearly a lot of new podcasts out there. And I love that you were saying about, getting in and starting and claiming your space. One of the things that I say a lot to people that are interested in knowing more about podcasting, I'm like, it's not too early, it's not too late, but you want to start now because it is one thing about podcasting that makes it work so well, and your podcast is a perfect example of this, is that you have a very niche focus in a positive way where you can go vertically deep in the interior design business arena and get a tremendous amount of engaged and loyal listeners onto your show. Instead of in most marketing strategies, you'll go broad and wide, but with podcasting, you can just really focus on this listening segment that's interested in your content. Claiming that space means that you have a longer opportunity to get those listeners and build relationships with them. So it's not too late, it's not too early. And the other thing I think that's really interesting, since you're obviously women entrepreneurs, women business owners, your listeners, I would say, without digging into it, would guess that you have a pretty heavy women audience for your show. And there was a recent report that was released, Westwood One's podcast survey that was released in 2018, is for fall of 2018. And the amount of listenership has grown in the women segment. So podcasting growth among females surpasses males across multiple measures. And the amount of time spent listening for women is 6 times greater than men. But here's kind of the rub. There aren't as many female podcasters. So we've got all of these women listeners exceeding the male listenership. See, Russ loves these stats because I always find a way to make it about the women entrepreneurs.
Always.
But women listen to 27% more podcasts than last year. However, the of women starting podcasting still really needs to catch up. So I say, hey, let's get that movement started at a little bit more of an accelerated pace, right?
So what's the age? Because when we first started, my kids were totally into podcasts, but myself, I was seriously kind of clueless and forget about my mom and dad's generation. Mm-hmm. So are you seeing that it's still a younger person thing, or it's growing towards the 40s, 50s, 60s?
So it's absolutely growing. However, we will say that there are, because of early adoption of technology, the group of millennials, so to speak, is going to be right now the largest portion of listeners. But that does not mean that they are the only portion. And so, yes, podcasting right now does have a tendency to skew more of that 18 to 35 demographic, if you will, thinking of it from an advertising perspective. But some of the things that are really interesting, and this is, again, about female podcast listeners, especially, is that they have a tendency to be more affluent. So like 34% have an annual income of between 75 and 100,000 a year, and 40% of that make over 100,000, and 72% are married, and 72% have children. So that is pretty powerful, because in my broadcast radio days, generating advertising revenue, that is like the golden demographic that you want to align your brand with, because typically those are the decision makers. And when you're reaching a young, upscale, married with children demographic, then you're really have a great opportunity to then turn those listeners into customers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that is why we call her the Stat Queen.
Totally.
But there's got to be some more information. I'm just curious to know. Are people listening from their stats, if you have them, if they're listening from their cars, if they're listening at home, are they on mobile devices? Like, where are the majority of people listening to podcasts?
Well, the smartphone technology is hands down one of the reasons that it is attributed to the success and exponential growth of podcasting initially. So if you got to do a little backstory on the history of the podcast, so to speak, iTunes started with the podcasting in 2005, but they put the podcast app on the iPhone in 2013. And so that's why everybody's like, why is podcasting such a big deal all of it, quote unquote, all of a sudden? Well, actually, the momentum for podcasting started when that podcast app showed up as a standard apparatus, if you will, on...
A lot of people, I don't think, knew that.
So you should see Joanne grab people's phones.
So when we first started doing this,
and she still does it.
I'll say, so are you listening to our podcast? And you can kind of see that look of like deer in headlights.
Are you grabbing their phones and loading your podcast?
No, totally.
Like,
she clicks the podcast button and she subscribes.
Do you have an iPhone? Yeah, hand it over. Okay, so I'll swipe till I see the purple podcast app, and I'll go, okay, here it is. Click. Okay, so you go into the search and you put, Inside Design, and it comes up, and then I hit subscribe. And I go, there you go. Now you'll be able to listen.
You need to do that with their Androids as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
What? What's that?
Yes, we do have
my husband working for Apple.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say we do have an Apple bias here, but that's a good thing. But I will say, what you just pointed out is so important to note if you're thinking about launching a podcast, because I get asked this question so many times. I think, like, if you said, what's the question you get asked the most? Right now, people's question is, I understand they're great. I listen to them myself, but how are people going to know that I have a show? And I think that is so interesting. That's because it's the exact same question that was asked a decade or so ago when people were launching their own websites and launching their own blogs, because it was like, it's not a different question if you think about it, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of emphasis on that right now. And so from an accessibility standpoint, you have some really interesting opportunities with podcasting. So you have the smartphone, and Google, and speaking of Android, Google Podcasts launched about 6 weeks ago, and that is now the go-to Android platform. So iTunes has the podcast app, and Android has Google Podcasts now. But the smart speakers, the Alexas and the Google Home, the smart speakers are increasing.
Apple, iPod.
Yes, that. They're going in. I was going to say, I don't think it's an iPod, but we'll go with that. HomePod. And but they're increasing levels of being in the home. So basically, now these stats don't sound very high, but if you think about it, 11% of people in the home own Alexa and Google. 72% own Amazon Alexa, but not Google, and they don't have the HomePod stats in here. But the thing about it is, like, that's a pretty heavy amount of users, early adopters on the smart speaker, and so you can get podcasts there now. You can get them through Spotify. You can get them through SiriusXM has their own app now called Spoke. So the accessibility factor's gone way up. The important thing, I think, though, is to answer that question of how people find our podcast is the traditional marketing strategy that you guys do so well. And I literally cite you as an example when I'm speaking on this subject or being interviewed on this subject, because you do such a great job. You have a very loyal social media fan base. You have a great newsletter database. You utilize your other areas that you were using to promote your business in the first place, and you just added letting people know that you have a podcast and integrated into that already existing not only efforts to market but also those marketing platforms. And I think that's so critical because people need to know that you have a show.
Yeah. And I love when we talk about things on this show that I think a lot of what we talk about on this show pertains to so many fields and industries and entrepreneurs. And I kind of like that because I want to talk to the interior design enthusiasts, but at the same time, I really want to help out anybody that's listening. And so I really think that this is something, obviously, we see from the growth of 8,000 a week, that if you are listening and you have your own business, whether you're an artist or you are a car salesman, or if you know your stuff and you are energetic and interesting and you want to share and you want to use that voice to then turn back and promote your company, then this is an option. This is something you need to think about. You know, it's the new wave.
Agreed.
So
yeah, it's a great way for people to position themselves as an expert in their industry. Of course, we love the idea of having your voice out there. We often use the phrase, use your podcast to change the conversation. And what we mean by that is you can change the conversation in your industry by providing your expertise, your perspective, your professionalism. You can also change the conversation philosophically, passionately. So if it's something that you're really just wake up every day and it just drives you to make a difference, make a change, or just have a conversation in it with a different perspective, you have a platform. And, you know, broadcast radio, as much as I love that business, they're pretty picky about who they give their platforms to. And I think that's one of the things that podcasting has really given people a voice in areas where they may not have had one before. And now the technology has caught up with the accessibility so people can find you and hear your voice, and you can build your own tribe of like-minded people no matter what your perspective is. So I think that
I love it, actually. I really think it's a great medium. Kelly and I have really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, totally.
And what I love the most is when somebody will reach out to us and say, I listened to your podcast about so-and-so, and it really made me think about this, or I did this because I listened. Yeah. So that's.
But I also think that, like anything, it is a super duper commitment. I mean, what we like this week we're recording 2 because I'm traveling, and so we have to come up with content, and then I'm out of town, and then we have guests, and it's a lot. It's quite the commitment. You don't want to put anything out there that's not quality content.
I will tell you this, Kelly, though. I'm gonna put Tracie and I on a little bit of pedestal. Think of how much more commitment you would have if we weren't holding your hand through this.
This is so
my
true.
God, I would never even do it.
It
wouldn't be possible.
We wouldn't do it.
We would not do it.
There you go.
This is why Tracie fell from the sky into our laps.
Yeah.
Which is why we're here even talking about it. And it's so great.
And just to give you guys some backdrop. So when we first decided we were going to do this, we went into lengthy contract negotiations with Produce Your Podcast. No, I'm kidding. But they had a contract that we negotiated, and we pay a monthly fee. And Tracie is always available for us as the marketing guru. Every week we produce. We're on the line with Russ. You might not know he's on the line with us.
Sometimes he slips in.
He slips in.
Well, sometimes you drag me in.
Yeah, sometimes I drag you in.
That's really more like it. Yeah. And so he's always there kind of watching, making sure Joanne doesn't cuss, making sure
that's what we have the bleep button for.
Yeah. That's really more my
that's her problem, not
expertise.
mine.
But he's watching the sound quality and are helping us with guests if, trying to connect them in and that kind of thing. There's a lot of behind the scenes going on.
Yeah.
We had a lot of, our lightning came through and totally messed up our computer and all of our equipment. We had to get new equipment.
But the great thing was
we couldn't have done it without Russ.
The list that they gave us, these are the headphones you need, this is the microphone you need, this is, I don't even know what half of these things are called. So we literally just...
Mixer.
Yeah, we just ordered them, put them in our office, spent a little bit of time on the phone with Russ, set it all up, and it was so
And then he
seamless.
yelled at us that our internet connection was not good enough, and we had to go call Comcast, and that was hell. And then, yeah.
Well, and I just want to add in there, though, that because of Kelly's husband being such a great technical guy, he was able to help with a lot of that. But a lot of our clients, in fact, I think you guys are the exception. The majority of our clients don't even want to touch anything. So we essentially source all of the equipment for them based on their environment of where they're going to produce and how many people, if they're going to have guests in the studio or not, co-host or not. So we go through this whole analysis, determine what equipment people need, and then we source it and ship it directly to them. And Russ does a setup with them. So you guys were really special because you had a tech guy on your side. But if you don't have that person, we really do handle that 360 degrees for you.
Well,
so
I can attest to that because when we got the new equipment, hubby was not around. So Russ and I were FaceTiming, and it was so funny because I don't think I'd ever really seen him in person because he lives in Florida. We're in Atlanta, and Tracie's in St. Simons. So I was like, oh, that's what you look like. Hey, Russ.
Oh, on the FaceTime?
Okay. So I'm showing him like the mixer, and he's like, okay, third button to the left, turn it to 12 o'clock. I'm like, okay, then take the big cord and put it in the other. I was like, thank God.
I think I was in Italy. Thank God.
Yes, you were. But we got it figured out. So I have to say, we simply wouldn't. If we hadn't have met you guys, we wouldn't be doing the show.
Well, yeah, and the greatest thing is Tracie is so strong in the marketing and just knows so much and is extremely responsive and answered every question. And then Russ on the technical side, same
and we have
kind of
Angie
thing.
behind the scenes.
And
we
then
can't forget her.
Yeah, and then we've got Angie who takes our graphics and puts them into under our
show notes
website and our show notes and all that. So talk about a seamless, it's so great to work with a company that has their bleep together. and
Thank you, guys.
And they they really
back
do.
to our OCD.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, I was like, look, like I built and we built, but philosophically speaking, from a female perspective, sorry, Russ, got to get that one in there again. I wanted a company that would do everything because I didn't want to touch any of this stuff. So it came out of a pure sense of need, which most entrepreneurs do start businesses out of a sense of what they feel is lacking. And correct. I wanted a system and a thing that I didn't have to touch anything except for have fun, show up, and do the show. Russ was amazing because he took that vision and then he came back swiftly and aligned with that vision and created and researched and developed and honed the technology to match up with my vision for not having to touch anything, systems or equipment wise. And he created this opportunity so that we can literally record you. So I wanted to circle back to what you guys said about traveling, is that in essence, truly, we can produce you guys if you're not together, if you're traveling, and still create a broadcast quality sound, which I think is our secret sauce, our differentiator, whatever you will, because we've even had guests that we've produced for our clients as far away as Bali and South Africa, and hosts that have been traveling in other global areas, and we still produce them with the same broadcast quality because we always record with a live engineer in the studio, like Russ. So it's just we just had Surya Rugs, a huge manufacturer, reach out to us and ask us if we wanted to record live at Atlanta Design Week, and they just called us too late. I mean, it's like tomorrow, or it's like early next week, and there's no way we could do it. Because we can make it happen.
I know. You see, you're good like that. But we're going to do it in for the next show, which I think is January.
Yeah. Okay.
But we knew that we could do it because we had you. So we said we can do that. We have never done it before, but we can absolutely do it, and it's on our it's on our list of to-dos anyway. Tracy keeps pushing us to go remote live, which we will do.
All right, and I do need to throw this in real quick. This would be the point where, behind the scenes during your show, I would send you a text on the side. Hey, you're at 32 minutes into the show, so this is me lassoing it in.
Yeah, because, Chatty Cathy's so good with her stats that we had to give her a little extra time.
Okay, so before we do like our, usually ending with our inspirational quote and our funny quote, so just tell people, Tracy, how they can reach out to you and what they need to do if they want to use your services.
Okay, so we are Produce Your Podcast. And so you can find us at produceyourpodcast.com, social media, at Produce Your Podcast, pretty much anywhere you look. But I think one of the things I want to put out there for you guys is that if this episode has inspired you to want to find out more information, there are two things that you can do. One is you can go to produceyourpodcast.com /ebook, and you can download a free ebook all around building your brand with podcasting. And two, you can reach out through the website on our contact page, and you can have a free, and I kind of hate, this does kind of sound sort of sales weaselly, so I'm going to clarify this. You can get a free 30-minute mini mapping session with me. But what I want to say about that is not a 30-minute me selling you on working with us. It's literally a 30-minute call where you bring any questions that you have, any ideas that you have, and the call is totally focused on answering your questions and providing you tips so that you can go to the next level, whether it's working with us or doing it on your own. But I think anybody should take advantage of that 30-minute call because it's all focused on you, right? So you can download our ebook. You can schedule a 30-minute call with me to brainstorm, answer any questions, and you can find us on social media. Because we are the podcast experts, we often put out a ton of tips, and we also have just launched our own podcast around podcasting. Produce Your Podcast, which
Lord.
So you can run, but you cannot hide.
Now we know. Well, we just love working with you guys, and we appreciate everything that you do for us, and we love our partnership. So that was really fun. So we're going to wrap up with our two quotes because we have quite the following on our funny and inspirational quotes now. So which one you want to do?
I'll do the inspirational one today. Okay, so this comes from Jordan Harbinger. He's an author, speaker, and host of the Jordan Harbinger Show podcast. It's a leading business and personal development podcast. And he says, most people that I know are interested in on-demand stuff. Podcasts are essentially audio Netflix.
Totally.
That's true.
Yeah. I like it.
Audio Netflix. So you scroll and scroll, you find what
and
you
then
want,
you binge
press the button.
listen. Then you binge listen.
Yeah, we want to be binge listened to.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you probably already are.
Is that another word like lunatical?
Yeah.
I like that one.
Analyzation, parallelization. We need to coin these phrases.
My lunatical dreams. Okay. So this
I think I hear podcast merchandise in your future, just saying.
So this quote, I literally laugh all day at our quotes when I think of them, later in the day when I get started getting punchy and tired. So here's the funny one to leave you giggling today. Remember, if you lose a sock in the dryer, it comes back as a Tupperware lid that doesn't fit any of your containers.
It's so true.
Every single person would go, "Yup."
How is that so in every household?
I just don't know.
It just doesn't.
I know. You put a load in, take a load out, there's a sock missing. What is in that drawer? I try to keep that Tupperware so organized, and it's still a cluster.
Yeah.
So anyway. Okay, that was fun.
Yeah, that was really fun.
All right, well, thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
We're a little over, but hope you all enjoyed that insight into the podcast world, and we will catch y'all.
Wait, by the way, I have to, unless people probably didn't realize this, but the opening and closing of our show does come from Russ.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And what is
that
so
is his voice.
Interesting, as part of, the service that we got from Produce Your Podcast, they sent us over several voices that we could use for our intro and our
And we didn't know it was Russ's
we
voice.
had no idea.
Yeah.
And so we're like, do we want a woman? I don't know. And so we heard Russ's voice. It's like, I'm digging. I dig his voice. And then we come to find out it's this Russ. So anyway,
Ceiling man.
he's the popcorn ceiling man. He has the most amazing voice.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
the ladies love him, but he already
Love
has
it.
2 wives, so he can't bring on
Well,
anything.
I think I have 4 now.
I think 4. I think Kelly and I have been added to the list.
Okay, well, we'll let you have that one.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Join Joanne and Kelly weekly for a lively conversation about trends, travels to industry events, current design projects, the good, the bad, and the ugly, do's and don'ts, product recommendations, and more. Be sure to follow the fun on Facebook. They're on Instagram at Kandrak Cole, and of course, you've got to visit them online at kandrak-cole.com for more information.